Hi, this is Sue from the Mountain Canary Company. Ed's going to talk to you today about his adventures in the backcountry with his little friends, rodents.
Rodents. Oh God, you know, that's something you don't expect to have to talk about or deal with back there. But truthfully, you know, they're high and low country. You still are going to potentially face issues when you're camping with rodents. Chipmunks really like to get into your goodies if you let them sit around. You've got cases where, especially get into high country, where there's low minerals because everything's been washed away completely, where these little guys love salt or anything to that type of commodity. They're really salt starved. Deer aren't a rodent, but an example of this is if you find a spot where you've urinated, the darn deer will darn near eat the ground down to get that salt from your body. Now the other place where you're going to see a lot of salt is on your tack. You know, if you ever left something like a cinch in a horse trailer old for the winter, not paid attention to it, come back and wonder why it's all chewed up, more than likely it was for the minerals in it. So we have to kind of keep aware of these little guys. They're a long way from being a cougar or a grizzly bear or a wolf, but you know they're still a pain in the neck. I've had a couple of adventures with them sleeping. They can interrupt the night's sleep pretty quick. Good example of that was I was up in a Dosey Wallops. It was a beautiful night. There wasn't a mosquito, or the wind was just calm. And Sue had made me a mosquito net. And at that time I usually slept in a canvas bedroll. But after a couple wild and woolly nights with mosquitoes, I decided I needed a mosquito net. So I couldn't find what I really wanted. So Sue and I bought some material and we sat around developing one. And it had a kind of little peak to it. What I would do is I'd stretch a rope across where I was sleeping, throw my bedroll down with my canvas bedroll down with my sleeping bag in it and an air mattress, and I'd hang the mosquito net, drop it down, and it had weights on it, and I'd just toss it out. There I was. I'd be snug as a bug in a rug. Well, it's a bit confining on a warm night, so there was no bugs at all. So I was snuggled in there, just a sans Z's and comfortable as you can be back in there. And all of a sudden, I was shocked awake with something with sharp little claws and a cold tail ran across my face. Oh man, I was up. What the heck was that? I'm up and I flipped the gosh darn thing up and I'm looking all over the place. Can't see a darn thing. So I realized I hadn't covered myself with my net because I didn't want to confine it to the air. So I grabbed that net and I flipped it out, tossed it out in it because it had curtain weights on. It landed on the outside there. I snuggled back to sleep. Gosh darn, if it wasn't about 5 minutes later, I got the same wake up. Sharp little claws and a tail. Where'd that come from? So I jumped up and grabbed my flashlight, and I'm looking around underneath the net all over there. Finally, I swung it up, and I looked up in the peak. And there was this poor little guy. He crawled up the net. And mind you, the no-see-um net's kind of fine. He was stuck up in the top there, just big old eyeballs at me like some kind of a kangaroo rat, looking at me going, oh my God, oh my God. And I just shook him out, and then covered back up, went to sleep. That was a rude awakening. Another time I was working up in the Cascades with some folks over from Lewis County chapter, Backcountry Horsemen, and I was hauling up some stuff for the Pacific Crest Trails Association. And that first night I'd spent in there, I slept in the gooseneck, which was kind of, had too much junk up there, it was kind of confining. So I decided next trip I took in to haul them out is I would go in and I took a cot with me. And I'd go in there, throw a tarp down, threw a cot in there, crawled in with my sleeping bag on that cot. Man, I was in hog heaven. all of a sudden I felt something run across my sleeping bag. What the heck is that? Little bugger did that. I hear him crawl up the leg of the cot, run across my sleeping bag. I'm up there looking to kill this little bugger, and it was a little kangaroo rat again. And this was, and he just went all over the place. I couldn't get him. And so for the next night or so, I chased that kangaroo rat around. Couldn't get to him, couldn't get any sleep. Well, I wasn't prepared for that at that time. I could have closed up all the holes in the trailer, and I didn't. I know what he was doing running around in there beyond me, because there was nothing in there that horse poopy to eat. And that was under a tarp. So that could be a little bit disconcerting, and you can lose a little sleep over it. And I knew one of the gals packing with me was a little concerned that they'd get in her hair. But she wouldn't put up Mary wouldn't put up a mosquito net. She was too concerned in looking up at night and seeing the stars. Well, I thought that was pretty cool too, but I was, if you look it up, there's a little high altitude mammal called a pika, P-I-K-A. Little round fuzzy little thing, looks like kind of like a chinchilla. Little round ears, they're cute as heck if you can see them. I've never really been able to see one in daylight. When nighttime comes up, if you're way up high, where I was way up high at the time, I went up and all that was around us was like high alpine mountain willows. They were just little short scrub. They're more of a bush than they are a tree. And there were a few fir trees scattered around, but there was no place for me to put up my rope to hold up my mosquito net. Well, what am I going to do? So I looked around and I saw this. So I took my bedroll and I slammed everything up into one of these big wall of willows. And I went up and tied off the top of my net onto some of these willow branches. Then I kind of stuffed everything underneath and as soon as I crawled in, I reached around, pulled my net in tight all around me, because I knew what I was in for. Because I've been in there before and had the same adventure before. But these little guys in the middle of the night run all over the place. And we were in a meadow area, and they like the meadow areas at night. So here he comes, Steve, bang, they'd hit that mosquito net, and you hear him bounce off. They'd run across my sleeping bag all night long, been bouncing off my mosquito net. That was so funny. So they're out there. But remember, the thing about it is, one time, you got to watch your tack. Really watch your tack in that kind of an environment for rodents. Now, I've been really lucky. I've never had one chew up anything back in there that I saw. Normally, when I go into a camping area, I take my saddles and I look for a down tree. Hopefully find a down tree. I'll throw down a tarp so I don't get a pitch on anything, and I'll start to pile up all my pack saddles and my riding saddles. Then I'll throw a tarp over them to keep the weather off them. In hopes that'll discourage the guys a little bit from crawling around. If they're not there too long, you're probably pretty safe. You're not going to get things chewed up. You'll even sit there for a week or so. Those little mineral hungry buggers will come looking for them. Well, one time I had a bunch of animals in, and another guy with me. So he starts. Soon I'd gone up and packed up an area. He'd stayed down and set a camp up. We came down off the divide into 9th Street. He'd already set up an area to take care of his saddles. Now I also will take and tie them up. I tie a rope up, tree to tree, and I'll actually hang the saddles on them so that they're not on the ground. Well, he'd already come down, thrown the tarp down, and he'd already thrown some of his tack on top of this, and he'd throw a tarp over. So this is where it already started. I'm going to make a saddle pile, like you see, a saddle pyramid. Well, there's some disadvantages to that. I'll keep that in mind too for yourself in the future. So I thought, well, it was late. We pulled in. It was dark already, and it was late. So I just kind of went ahead, added to the pyramid until I threw my good riding saddle up on top. Well, next morning we were breaking down, ready to get going, and I pulled the tarp off. I'm all set to start saddling up, and right in the seat of my riding saddle was a pile of grain. He'd had a bag of grain laying over out of the way, but that little bugger had gone over and started collecting grain was already deciding to make a home on the top of my saddle up here about that high in the air. He was going to store grain. He had about a fistful of grain already stored up. So in reality, it's if you're going to sleep on the ground, there's two things you probably should consider keeping, to kind of secure yourself a little bit. You don't want creepy crawly things to come visit you at night either, because where I am, we don't have a lot of creepy crawlies. But there are places they do have a lot of creepy crawlies. They do like warmth after the sun goes down. Tell you a little story. A guy named Thompson was a cartographer for the Northwest Trade Company. He was actually searching for the source of the Columbia River. And in his process of coming down what he thought was the Columbia, and which it was, he ended up coming through the area around Spokane, Washington. And in that area, across those prairie in there, across that prairie, all the way down to almost to the mouth of the Columbia, until you get into western Washington, western Washington, western Oregon, he would not allow his crew to put their bedrolls down until after dew, because there were so many rattlesnakes there. They were actually joining them in their sleeping bags, or not sleeping bags, but their bedrolls, for warmth. So you got to keep all that in their blankets. You got to keep all that in mind. So a good way to do it is though, and I'll put a picture of it over here on the piece here with you. Is you can find these little mosquito net huts, and I just didn't check, and I'll check to get the right wording for you on it. And only there's a little frame, which it comes up, and it's got a long tail across it, which you can tuck in. You lay this thing over your sleeping bag, crawl into it, and keep yourself away from the mosquitoes, which are in the no-see, which just are nasty buggers at night. Keep you awake. Mice, little critters bouncing around, and or maybe by chance a creepy crawly. So just something to keep in mind. I've slept a lot more than I've ever slept in a tent. I've slept outside of a tent, on the ground, and comfortably. But that takes a little bit of pre-planning, planning, and so give it a thought. Ask yourself, how can I do this? How will it work out for me? And it's 90% of what we're doing out there is the fun part about it, is figuring out what the heck to do. And for me anyway. So I hope this is some interest to you. A little mule tale here about rodents. So again, I'll put a picture over here of that setup I've got. I've got two of them. I actually put them up in my little tent that doesn't have a bottom in it. So okay, folks, thank you all for coming by and visiting, and you have a wonderful day. We'll see you later now. But remember, always ride as often as you can. But please, please, ride safely. See you, folks.